Well, let's talk a little bit more about this. Leanne De Bassompierre is a news correspondent based in Abidjan in the Ivory Coast. She joins us now. Leanne, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Effectively, what does it mean here if ECOWAS says it's shutting down its borders to Mali and all trades between the region and the country cease?
It's been 18 months, so 2 coups, and still no word on when elections will be taking place. They were meant to take place next month, but the interim military government is only proposing that in 5 years. And of course, who will be suffering? It's the Malian people. As you rightly said, Air France has already cancelled its flights into and out of the country. All regional flights have also been cancelled. So people trying to get in and out of Mali, especially now after the holiday season, it's been very difficult for them to do so. Malian people that are there, some Malians that I've spoken to here with family there have said that they're really fearing for the future of the country. It's also a landlocked country, and so they really rely on border nations to help them get some of the goods into the country, to get things out of the ports. It's Africa's 3rd biggest gold producer, so getting the gold out, and gold, of course, being a huge source of foreign revenue for them, and of course, foreign revenue leading to help fight the security crisis, the health crisis. And so from here on out, it's going to be very difficult. And with those borders closed, with the membership to ECOWAS being suspended, and also within the monetary union, they've not been able to use that money and have the reserves frozen in the Central Bank of West African states, will mean that Mali will become even more impoverished than what it already is.
And this is what the military junta has characterized this action by ECOWAS as, saying that it is inhumane and that it will have a major impact on a population already hit by security crisis, a health crisis, as you've already mentioned. But what is ECOWAS effectively saying? That it is branding the interim transition military junta as basically illegitimate, and they're saying they'll no longer entertain this, basically.
So what they basically are trying to do is to get Mali to hold elections as soon as possible. They're saying that it is unacceptable to have another 5 years of this transition government and only plan elections for 2026, that it risks destabilizing the entire region. Of course, the security crisis that Mali has seen in recent years is now pushing over into other countries like Burkina Faso, into border countries, or coastal countries rather, like Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and they're saying that we need to do it to protect our own economies. We're seeing people from Mali leaving Mali, going to find work elsewhere in the region as well. And so it does become a bigger problem if that doesn't return to civilian rule, if the country does not follow the instructions of ECOWAS. And as I said earlier, ultimately it's Somalian people who will end up suffering.
So I'd imagine then that means they are the unintended casualties of this action by ECOWAS. I mean, we've spoken many a time with political economists about the use of sanctions and whom they actually impact. Some of the Malians there have relatives outside of their borders. We're looking at places like Senegal, Guinea, and the Ivory Coast. So does that mean those are the other unintended casualties of this action?
So they would try to perhaps move out of the country, but land borders for people movement is still closed because of the health crisis. There isn't a free movement of transport of goods, and so the junta has said that they will ensure that goods will still be able to move freely in and out of the country. But that remains to be seen how it's actually going to be done, because they rely on the countries surrounding the countries so much. So it's going to be very difficult. They're going to have to come up with some kind of a solution. The military junta leader and interim president is called an emergency cabinet meeting today, and he is expected to address the nation this evening, hopefully give some more details. But Bloomberg spoke to Barrick Gold, which is the biggest producer in the country. And they said so far the operations have not been impacted, but it is a fluid situation and they are watching the situation very closely.
But I mean, further down the line, aren't we then likely to see further social desperation and economic depression?
Definitely, as I mentioned earlier, Mali is one of the poorest nations, not only in Africa, but in the world. And so the country and the people that have been suffering tremendously because of the COVID-19 health crisis, the security crisis, many people being displaced because of jihadist activity in that country. It's moved from the center to the capital and everywhere actually in that nation. And so we'll just see further and further opportunities for jihadist activity to flourish in that nation. And unfortunately, nothing that anyone will be able to do about it once it becomes out of control.
Now, Leanne, firstly, is there a military situation developing here? And I ask this on the basis of ECOWAS and the military junta in Mali itself, both saying that their troops remain on the ready. And secondly, what are the other external diplomatic relations looking like? I'm talking globally here. The tensions, are they impacting on relations with Western allies of Mali and Moscow as well?
So the situation with the military and the juntas asked that the military remain on high alert because they do expect ECOWAS soldiers to move in to try to quell the situation there. But of course, there is the ongoing situation with France, and so there's a huge anti-France sentiment in the country as well. Of course, Mali as well. It's a key nation in G5 Sahel in dealing with jihadism. They've up until now, refused to outright confirm that they are Russian mercenaries in the country with the training. So it is a huge geopolitical situation that's playing out in Mali at the moment, and it remains very fluid, the situation. Things could change in moments. We're waiting with bated breath to hear what comes out of the cabinet meeting this evening and what the next steps will be of the junta.
We know that Mali's interim president, Colonel Goita, has said the postponement of the elections will continue until they tame the conflict. Now, that really depends on what you read into that statement, taming the conflict. Whom will be tamed, with what resources? You've just mentioned Russian mercenaries. What kind of situation is likely to play out over the next couple of months?
Well, ECOWAS is really trying to get Mali to return to civilian rule, and with civilian rule, they'll be able to negotiate more funds to be able to, with the international partners, to be able to fight the security crisis in that country. As it stands at the moment, without the backing of the regional body, they won't have the backing of other international bodies as well to continue to fight this situation that has been felt not only by Mali, but the region at large. And so it is a problem that needs to be resolved in a global way because it's not just going to go away overnight.
As we mentioned just a moment ago, the issue of Colonel Goita saying that they're going to tame the conflict. Does this create a void for militants there?
It's already created a void for militants where they see that there's so much instability that the junta already, there's been a coup in 2020 and then another coup within a coup barely a year later. They see that things are very fluid, and of course they use that opportunity to come in with their own forces. And also, with the local population being so fragile in terms of not having economic resources. They're also very easily won over by these jihadists in helping them, in becoming part of them. And so they're solving some socio-political situations, but also creating other problems at the same.
Oh, thank you so much for your time and speaking to us, Leanne De Bassompierre. She is a news correspondent. She speaks to us from Côte d'Ivoire in Abidjan. And when we return, we'll be talking to you about the situation in Uganda, particularly the education sector. Almost 2 years that children there have not been going to school. And of course, critics are saying this has done immeasurable harm to the education gains made in the country. Aung San Suu Kyi, what is her fate? This is the question that we ask as the military junta there sentences her to an additional couple of more years, this time for being in possession, as they say, of foreign walkie-talkies. You're watching The Globe. Do stay with us.